Shri Rama Rama Ramati Rame Rame Manorame Sahasranama Tatulyam Ramanama Varanani. I delight in the beautiful name of Sri Rama again and again, for even once remembered. The name of Sri Rama bestows the fruit equal to 1,000 names of the Lord Vishnu. Om Sahana Bhavatu Sahano Bhunatu Saha Viryam Karavavahai Tejasvinavaditam Astu Ma Vidvishavai. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. So we continue the story of Rama, and just to remind you where we were, from where we left off, Sugriva and Vali were in some kind of mortal combat, and Rama had committed to Sugriva that he would shoot and kill his brother Vali. And why was that? Well, we know the history, that there was a misunderstanding, and Vali was assumed to be dead, and Sugriva was asked to take the throne, and he duly did it. And Vali, in fact, wasn't dead, and he came back and discovered this, and became extremely angry and hunted down Sugriva. Sugriva, seeing his life was in danger, had to leave. And Vali took Sugriva's possessions, and he took Sugriva's wife. There is a parallel in the story because, of course, Ravana has taken Rama's wife, Sita, and Vali has taken Sugriva's wife, among other things. And we see there a kind of dual sort of personality, good and noble on the one side, but on the other side, impetuous. Now, of course, they are all warriors, and warriors by tradition will have to have some virtues, but what are virtues? And here we may have to resort to the famous philosopher Aristotle. Aristotle's idea was that there are virtues and vices. And how do we figure out what is a virtue and what is a vice? Well, if you want to do the right thing, it's neither extreme virtue nor is it extreme vice. It's something in the middle. And that has to be worked out, has to be evaluated. With an example. Supposing you see somebody in the street being mugged by a thief, then will you employ your courage and immediately go and try to rescue this person? That may well be the right thing to do. But is it? Aristotle doesn't think so. Aristotle thinks, well, wait, we have to assess the situation. Supposing I go in impulsively on the basis of moral virtue and go and rescue the person, that person may be so powerful, for example, let's say in New York streets with a gun or something, and I'm unarmed, that in fact we're putting two people in danger as opposed to one. Should I not actually take a better course of action and resort to an authority, a policeman or something, to come and sort the situation out? And that, in the circumstances, might well be the best thing. So when we decide what is the right thing to do in a socially moral context, what we will need to do is step back and think a little bit, evaluate the circumstance, and see what is the best course of action. So courage, for example, as a virtue, is not seen as going in and rescuing it in a chivalrous manner, but it is first evaluating what the odds are, what the best rational course of action is, and then doing the right thing. So when we look at some different moral issues, we have to take into consideration probably Aristotle's point of view. That may be the right thing to do. Real morality lies in a middle course, somewhere in between extreme virtue and extreme vice. If you see somebody with a blemish on their face, if you want to be absolutely truthful, you might say, you have a blemish on your face. But you know, when you think about it, that would be offensive. The person already knows it. And of course, the vice aspect would be to make the blemish on the face in the first place. So we have to have some middle ground, some way of weighing these things up in the circumstances. Swami Vivekananda gives a wonderfully unique, I feel it's a unique definition of what morality is. He bases it around the virtue of strength. Any thought or word or deed, anything that promotes the best, the most stable strength all around for everyone is the most virtuous in a moral sense. And his ethical sense will be more to do with egocentricity, but morality, he would use this. And that means that we have an opportunity to weigh up a circumstance and apply some kind of subjective morality. There is, of course, objective morality, which is much more general. You shouldn't kill unnecessarily. Shouldn't tell an untruth unnecessarily. Now, why I'm bringing this up is because what Rama has done is he has promised Sugriva to support him in his quest for gaining back his property, his kingdom, his wife, and so on, regaining that. You see, in the first place, a total misunderstanding. Sugriva is not totally at fault. But Vali, of course, if he had the patience to listen, would understand a little bit more. But Vali jumps to a conclusion in Pinchas nature, and that's not the end of it. We're told that Vali is the son of Indra, that Vali has certain powers, and anybody who engages in direct combat with him, well, half of their power will come to him. There's this other aspect. So what is the moral lesson for us if we weigh it up correctly? Because I left you last week with something of a moral dilemma. Because Rama is not engaging in direct contact with Vali. He's persuading Sugriva, please, here's a garland, a creeper garland, so that I can distinguish the two of you. You look so much alike. So that I can shoot the arrow at the right person. Well, why doesn't Rama engage in combat directly? That seems to be the morally chivalrous thing to do, the courageous thing to do. And Vali indeed notices it. And he challenges Rama on his virtue, even insults him. So this is an act of cowardice. You've ambushed me from the side. Now, let us look at the significance of this. Vali made some severe mistakes. We may say that that's a kind of mild language for saying something. Today when a politician tells an untruth, or what we call a lie, he says, I misspoke. So the mild way of doing it, you don't see somebody's wife. Ravana has done the same thing. And so Ravana's crime and Vali's crime may well be on a parallel. The other thing, of course, is that Vali has, in previous times, had a combat with Ravana. He would not be able to assist Rama in direct combat since there's a prehistory and emotions are likely to run high and so on. So there is this. In any event, Vali has a great advantage in having this boon from Indra. And so, naturally, when the odds are unfair, we have to be careful about our course of action. Rama has already made a mistake. He made a mistake in running after the deer and shooting the deer and so on. That resulted really in the kind of diversion that the plot required, and Ravana then seizes Sita and takes her off. And so this is the issue. The other thing is, of course, Rama has made his pact with Sugriva. He has said, I'm your ally. But where is the source of this? And now we have to go a little bit back in the story. So we'll understand that, if you remember, there was a previous, well, we'll call them a demon, Kabandra, but that's not exactly accurate. there was a person who was a Gandharva, and he was given a boon, and the boon really was, all boons are given by Brahma, because Brahma is the cosmic mind that is responsible for enacting and materializing all our desires, all our wishes, all our thoughts. There's only one mind, cosmic mind. But you see, the recipient of this became extremely proud to the extent that he boasted, and of course his boast really was to do with pride and greed and pleasure and so on and so forth. And so this worked against him. Now, when we say things like there was a curse or something of that nature, we're really talking about there's a curse that goes in accordance with a causal law, what we might call sowing and reaping. And so we have to understand things in this context. Now, if we go back in the story, then we'll see that this Kabanda was there. And Kabanda was eventually cursed because Kabanda was, his egoism got the better of him. And then, of course, he was, his whole demeanor and his form had changed into a monstrous form, with the idea that he had no head or anything like that. He had this grotesque arms, and when he came across Rama and Lakshmana and so on, he realized that this was his salvation, because it was predicted. When Rama comes and cuts your arms off, the only means of getting your food, and this creature has cannibalistic tendencies, and he grabs Rama and Lakshmana, the only way out is cut his arms off. Then your cremated body will resurrect again as a Gandharva. We can say something like an angel with musical abilities, heavenly musical abilities, like that. And the moral of the story would be that in order to rescue us from moral degradation, then we have to resort to the divine. We have to change our thinking and spend all our energy in tuning the mind into the divine. And the divine will then rescue us to our pristine condition, and all our past actions can be wiped out. Our karma can be wiped out through divine grace. So you may remember this story of Kabanda and how this develops, and what is the context, not just a moral context. Kabanda had indicated to Rama, here, go and find out Sugriva, because he can be your ally in rescuing Sita from Ravana. And so Rama approaches Sugriva. He does not approach Vali. And so alliances are sacred. Now you see, when the arrow of Rama pierces him in the chest, he falls like a clean-cut forest tree. And before Vali closes his eyes in death, clearly it's a mortal wound, then he wants a glance of who is the person who shot this arrow unexpectedly from the side. And Rama and Lakshmana both present themselves graciously. But Vali says, I have in no way wronged you. He starts his defense like this. Why did you strike me when I was fighting with someone else? If you wanted to combat me, if you had some grievance against me, much better to face me directly in mortal combat. But you see, Rama's reply would be, well, look, you've wronged here your brother Sugriva, you've misunderstood him, you've driven him out, you didn't have the patience to listen to him and understand properly. And you've wronged your brother, and your brother would normally have required protection from you. Instead of protecting him, you drove him out. And Vali says, well, you see, you're ever just and kind to people. That's what they say. But I see actually something devious in you. And I'm accusing you. You're treacherous. He's very blunt in his speaking. He has nothing to lose. He's dying anyway. And Rama makes this pronouncement. You see, the person of immoral character, any wicked actions, can't escape from my arrow. What is this arrow? This is the arrow of justice. It's the arrow that is delivered as part of the causal law, cause and effect. And Vali again makes his defense. You see, I never trespassed into your country, and I have not defamed you, but still you have fatally hurt me. Yes, says Rama, I don't confine myself to one country because I'm a universal savior. One country or another, that's not what it's all about. We have to have more universal point of view. Now, it's true in our own time, of course, that we are completely ignorant. Apart from global news, we are really not in touch in our understanding with affairs that are beyond our local field of interests. And so it's quite natural for us to be more interested in a local family than it is in a national family or even a village family or a town family or a city family or a nation family, and much more so, in other words, much less interest when it goes more to other regions of the world. I was having a discussion at breakfast and I learned some things that were completely beyond my scope, of interest in terms of economic affairs and so on and so forth, passing interest in these things only. So we are remote from the tragedies of the world and from the difference of the world and the things that need correcting. This, in a way, is fortunate for ourselves, because if we were to have that kind of interest, we'd be half mad with despair, apart from anything else. And if we saw the good side, we might feel joyful as well. But you'll see, it's not about your country, it's not about your nationality. Wherever wickedness is there, says Rama, I redress it. He's speaking as an avatara, as a cosmic balancing power that has come into the world to redress acute situations and restore a sense of morality. And so you're given to evil ways and you're given to lust. You stole Sugriva's wife, your brother's wife. And Vali says, well, after all, we are monkeys. That's a fatal statement. We have no codes of conduct. And Rama says, well, animals are hunted by man without forewarning. If you want to shoot an animal, you can do it from the side. You can do it from the back. But you don't come under that category. You're highly educated, but if your behavior is as base as a monkey, then unfortunately we have to treat you like one. Now we know our nearest genetic cousins will be something like chimpanzees in Africa. And we see a lot of human behavioral traits because of there's a genetic link there, biological link. But we can see there the vicious traits that are there in chimpanzees, along with traits of love and compassion. Both are there. And we see that the most horrendous cannibalistic tendencies are there amongst chimpanzees, and chimpanzees are much stronger than humans. But this animal nature, which we might call our biological nature, that comprises layers of, let's say, the reptilian mind to do with survival and the mammalian mind to do with relationships, and then the neocortex. The neocortex comes in a more developed way. And it is this judging faculty that we have, which leads us to conclude that the best for us is the highest moral behavior. And that we can call education. And you see, Vali's reply, he's still debating on his deathbed. He says, your greed for this kingdom has driven you into the base act of pretension to back up a wrong person. In other words, he is projecting, what we call projection. He's projecting his own greed onto Rama. And that's something that a person who is highly defensive always does. Answering a question with a question. But Rama keeps quiet, very wisely. And in self-defense, his brother then picks it up and explains the position. Lakshmana says, no, that's not so. My brother has voluntarily renounced his whole empire, and it's a vast empire, and he's taken to asceticism in order to redeem both of their father's statements and redeem his father from the guilt of a false promise. But Vali says, you are arrayed as an ascetic. This is a moral argument going on, which we might engage in whenever there's a moral question for us. So you're dressed up like a holy person, an ascetic, but you hurt others as a despot. Why do you practice deception in this fashion? Now, we might assume that he has a valid argument, since, he could be seen to make some valid points. But don't forget, Vali's power or his boon is that whoever he combats and fights with, he has the superior advantage that he takes half the power of the other person. And so this dressed up in one form and behaving in another one, yes, this is the charge currently. No, Rama says, punishing the wicked is as sacred as asceticism, and I'm performing both. You see, because there are two types of sages. There is the teacher sage and there's the administrative sage. And the administrative sage, we have an example. Janaka, for example, is the administrative sage. And we can see that Vishwamitra, who was originally a military person, he couldn't combat his demons. He had to get Rama and Lakshmana to do it, because once he became a Brahmin, as it were, once he became a rishi, then he could not employ violence. That was the separate role. But both roles are sacred. So yes, you can be an ascetic and you have certain rules of conduct there, but by the same token, you can be an administrative sage as well. And that is as sacred. Combating that wickedness is as sacred as sitting in a cave and meditating. And then you see Vali again has this point. You see, you've made an alliance with Sugriva, and you've done it to regain Sita, who is lost to you. Yes, Rama agrees this is so. We are pledged to friendship. And a pledge to friendship, that's a pledge indeed. There's a bond there. But Vali says, well, you see, with your loss of your wife, you've lost your discretion also, because a king ought to resort to another king, and I'm the king. And you have to resort to me for help. But instead, you've gone to a forlorn refugee, a fugitive, somebody who's run away. Well, says Rama, I shouldn't seek help from an unrighteous man. I can't seek help from you. You don't pass the currency of morality. However great and readily available your help might be. And so Vali says, do you know who has abducted your wife? And Rama says, well, the late vulture king Jatayu gave me an understanding that it was the king of Lanka, Ravana. He's taken her away in a Vimana, a flying chariot. And Vali says, well, you've made a big blunder here, because Ravana is my puppet. I control him. And just a word from me, he'll come on his knees, he'll submit Sita to you. You should have come to me. It would have been better, instead of shooting me from the side. But seated where you are, you may have got back your wife through my intervention without doing anything. You could sit there, I can do it, handle it for you. And Rama says, well, I ask one thing of you. One man secretly steals, another openly plunders. Who of the two commits the greater offense? Well, the plunder, of course, Vali says. Well, both you and Ravana are experts in abducting women. And he steals and you plunder. Death is to be inflicted for the second-rate offense of stealing another man's wife. What else but death is to be awarded for the greater offense of plundering another man's wife? You yourself have made the pronouncement, plundering is worse. But you're the plunderer. He stole and you plundered. So how can I form an alliance with you? And what else but death is to be awarded for the greater offense of plundering another man's wife? And in the public welfare, I'm resolved to exterminate both of you. Both you and Ravana. I have to do it. So how can I ask for your help? How could I have done it? But, said Vali, you gave me no forewarning. It's not fair. It's unjust. You should at least have written me a letter or note, sent me an email, something like that. Rama says, well, providentially, forewarning comes to all beings. That's the luck of, that's if you're lucky, it'll come. But the wicked and the conceited pay no heed to it. Now, when we reap the consequences of karma, in other words, this causation, law of sowing and reaping, what you put in, you get out, nothing more, nothing less. It's a kind of law of conservation for any energetic thing that happens, that the sum total is never created, is never destroyed. It's always there constantly and is always lurking around. And we don't know when the consequence is going to come. Don't be comfortable thinking when you do something wrong that you can get away with it. You cannot. On either in this life or the next life, something will catch you and it will come in an unexpected way, probably from the side. You have to be alert about it. So, having said all of this, Vali has closed his eyes and reflects for a while. And now, then, just to remind you of last week, he says to himself, well, yes, in fairness, there was a providential forewarning, because don't forget, Tara, that's his wife, warned him. And I ignored her advice, he says. I should have paid attention. It's not that there was no forewarning. I just didn't notice it. Same thing too. We ignore, possibly, any forewarning signs of the poor effect or bad effect of our karma. And so then, of course, he opens his eyes, but is still in combative mood and charges Rama again. But why have you, like a coward, remained hidden and shot at me when I was engaged in a duel with another man? Now, I've already really explained, but he says, no, it's not cowardice, it's strategy. There's a difference. God Indra gave you, through the gold chain you wear, the boon of appropriating just half of the prowess of the enemy that faced you in combat. And so the advantage of this great, great boon, this gift over your probable enemy, has given you pride and heedlessness in you, thinking that you'll combat everybody. Your ego has been inflated. And you've abused this gift and you're a menace to society. And we can now see some parallels with Gobindra. You have abused this gift and you are a menace to society. So, as an incarnation, as a person dedicated to Dharma, then Rama says, my function is to annul this dangerous power in you. So I've executed that as I ought to, in a strategic way. And there's no other way I could have done it. Now, of course, Vali now swoons, and after a while, he regains some element of consciousness. And it is good on your deathbed to adjust things correctly
So he acknowledges that his end is nearing. The veil of vanity then, of course, vanishes from his heart. And this is fortunate. He says, I realize the wrongs I have done. The tables have turned. Instead of being accusatory, he now acknowledges in all truth and honesty, I understand. I understand that I've done some wrong things. Still, there's time to make amendments. So he does this. Brother Sugriva, he asks, please come near. He asks forgiveness from his brother. The crime I have committed against you is a great crime. Please forgive me. And Sugriva, in a noble, valiant, open-hearted gesture, says, beloved brother, you see, as a mark of love, I ought to have put up with your offenses. So I'm also admitting some weaknesses. And instead, I've earned the infamy of the murderer because I've now slain you. And I ask for your pardon. And with your blessings, I shall leave Kishkinda, and you crown your son, Angada, and gain freedom. But again, Vali says, let's now at least be united in love. You please accept the kingdom. Make Angada the crown prince. When on your demise or retirement, he will be the crown prince. He will be the king. And take Tara's counsel, my wise wife, in matters that are important. She's always guided me on the right path. Now she will guide you also. And then due, of course, to the sinking energy, Vali becomes silent for a while, closing his eyes. You can imagine the scene is extremely dramatic and moves every heart because of this reconciliation attitude. And it's a lesson in forgiveness. It is the Ashtavakra Gita that tells us straight away that there are some qualities we have to have, apart from dissociating from the attachment to objects in this world. We should also cultivate forgiveness. Now, it's easy to forgive, but not to forget. And if we never forget, we never forgave. So forgiveness is a primary thing. Simplicity, compassion, all of these are virtues to be cultivated. And dedication to the highest truth has to be cultivated, in a sense of contentment. Contentment comes from gratitude. These are some of the virtues that have to be cultivated. But forgiveness is first. We can get no peace of mind if we never made a reconciliation. Now, in South Africa, after the apartheid era, when independence came and Nelson Mandela took the reins of power, there was something wonderful that happened. Two things, really. A Truth and Reconciliation Commission was set up, where nobody was going to be accused, but it was a bearing the soul. How can we reconcile and forgive unless we bear the soul in an honest way, in a truthful way, in a way that exhibits the maximum humility? And then the second thing is knowing a great history of racial tensions. Nelson Mandela, in a surprise move that was completely revolutionary yet simple, he puts on the Springbok rugby jersey and greets all the members of the rugby team, the national rugby team. All of them were white. Therefore, reconciling racially whites and blacks. And there would be people who would be disgruntled on both sides by this, no doubt. But he showed huge, huge leadership and statesmanship when he did that one simple act. Because up to then, rugby was the sport of the 20-30% of the population, and he entered into it and entered into the national spirit of it. That one single act created an atmosphere of forgiveness and reconciliation. A man who's been imprisoned for I don't know how many years, initially on the basis of, possibly, violent acts. That's what he was accused of and imprisoned for, violent internal terrorist acts, mellowed over time, became thoughtful, became a real leader, a real statesman, and not by anything else except the example of his actions. And coming back to Aristotle, Aristotle recommends how we learn these moral judgments and virtues. Well, there are some people who are the very embodiment of these, and we have to learn from them. This is his solution. And so this is a tried and tested formula. We learn from Rama what to do in these situations. And we learn from all these characters. There's a natural, spontaneous opening of the heart. And so, with the sinking energy, Vali becomes quiet and silent. And then, after closing his eyes, he opens them and gazes upon Rama. And he addresses him. "O Rama, now I realize the glory of your arrow. It has broken the fetters of my evil karma. If it hadn't been for the mortal wound and the arrow piercing him, all this change of heart would not have taken place. And the last thought of your death is the first on the other side, so to speak. Same thing when we sleep. The last thought when we go to sleep is the first on awakening. It's the same syndrome that we have." And Sugriva returns the reconciliation attitude as well, a change of heart that's going to make him a good leader. "Brother, I shall fast unto death for my wickedness." But Vali says, "No, not so, brother. You have to play a great part in the cause of Rama." And the language is like that. We're all playing a part in a divine game. He says, dedicate yourself and our kingdom and our populace and our everything for the purpose of redeeming Sita, because this is the most important thing now that you have to do. And as far as the gold chain on his neck is concerned, well, it becomes ineffective in a corpse, no doubt. And so Vali says, well, before I breathe my last breath, you take this gold chain, you put it on your neck. Me, I used it for selfish ends, but you use it to serve Rama, and you used it to serve Rama well, please. And Rama, by your grace, I am freed. And you see, the name of Rama is there. Now, just to remind you of the power of this name, when Valmiki sat down under the instruction of Narada, he was asked to chant Rama, and his habit level would refuse to do it. He could only chant Mara Mara. And we know that Mara embodies or signifies conceptually all the things adverse to Dharma, all the behavioral traits, in his case of robbery and murder, egocentricity, and doing the what is clearly not virtuous. Naturally, they all come up with us. When we try to meditate, our habit level comes and demands attention. So the only way to cultivate meditation is we have to cultivate virtue ahead of this in our in situ life. And then when we sit down for meditation, we don't get disturbed by this, but we require persistence. And so, according to the instruction, he does japa. Mara, 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 Mara becomes Rama, 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 the very opposite of it. The significance of the word Rama is everything that is opposite to Mara, everything that is to do with Dharma, righteousness, truth and beauty and goodness and love and harmony and all the virtues we can think of in the highest possible ideal of mankind. So he's quoting Ram, that's on his last breath. And then with this blessed name on his lips, he's able to pass into the blissful beyond. Of course, the bereaved Tara made her desolate appearance before this, on the scene of this tragedy, and naturally weeping and sobbing, and along with the son Angada too, she embraces the remains of her husband and her king, and the heart-rending lamentation was heard by everyone. So it was thought-provoking, befitting a cultured woman. "O my Lord, O my hero, many a hero you have been laying low. Now your turn has come to lie low. But why have you left me behind?" is the lament of a dedicated widow. And of course, Sugriva, his brother, is not unmoved by the scene. He watches it. And he's also in a grip of fresh remorse. And his enmity to the brother just goes into unimportance, into superficiality. And in fact, it had all melted and evaporated away. In other words, forgiveness has come in. And he bitterly curses himself for being the cause of this calamity, because after this forgiveness comes lack of self-forgiveness and comes out as guilt. And so in a faltering tone, he confesses to Rama that his own death alone on the spot would compensate for the crime that he had thoughtlessly committed now. And he pleads that his generals would sincerely serve Rama's cause in finding out Sita. A similar death, kindly meted out to the revenge-stained younger brother, would, in his opinion, cure him of this heinous sin. But you see, if Rama was not prepared to kill the one to whom protection was assured, the second course open to him was to perish in a blazing fire, and he resolved to resort to it. But you see, Rama has to counsel him. You see, there has to be a continuation of the move to rescue Sita. And Sugriva seems to have forgotten his alliance. He leaves it to the generals. No, my pact is with you, Sugriva. This is Rama's point of view. And so he counsels him, tells him to steady, just as Sugriva himself had counseled Rama and restored an element of stability. And so he brings about a change of attitude with regard to sin and virtue, which is another moral dilemma. Will we punish ourselves for the sin? Or will we use the next second and the next second and the next second to put something virtuous in? And to restore our own minds in equilibrium so that we can be beaming for the rest of humanity. You see, we don't really regard liberation as the highest state. We regard service of man, using all our energy for the welfare of mankind, is the highest. This was pointing out to Swami Vivekananda by his teacher. I thought you'd be like a great banyan tree, you see. And so he pointed out this state of samadhi is not actually the highest state. And Rama really has become a calm spectator to Tara's bitter bereavement. And of course, she literally rolls on the ground and wails, "Leaving beloved Angada behind as an orphan and me as destitute widow, you have gone on a journey of non-return." This is, of course, the phase of blaming when, so much explored by the late Dr. Elizabeth Kubler-Ross in terms of bereavement. And any disappointment can be a bereavement. But we have to gather our senses together a little bit, having given ourselves some time for things to unfold so that our minds can be stabilized. So now, with no sign of anger on her face, she pleads with Rama. You see, you are the protector of everything that is harmonizing and balancing, what we call dharma. You know much more than anybody else does how painful it is for the husband and wife to be separated, because you're going through it yourself. And that pain you have unwittingly brought on me. So please atone for it by dispatching me also. See the nobility of it, you know? And do it with your kind arrow. Do it and dispatch me to the region where you have sent my husband, so the two of us can be together, because what is worth living now? Life is not worth living without this husband. And you can see how Tara, who understands her husband's virtues and vices, is completely non-judgmental, because love overcomes all this kind of judgment. But Rama anyway pacifies her. He tells her, you see, while his earthly exploits are over, now he has gone into higher regions. That's the way we should take all death. We've gone to higher regions. We simply closed our eyes. And the continued story takes place. Your mourning for him is a hindrance to him, he tells her, because on the other hand, you're discharging the earthly duty assigned to you by him, is your homage to him, and is same for all of us. What is the greatest homage we can pay, let's say, to an admired person, a beloved person, a teacher, or a family member, is to give homage to them by carrying out their own wishes, what they possibly couldn't have fulfilled on this earth. It comes to mind immediately how when Swami Vivekananda, at the tender age of 39 years, a short life really, having accomplished so much, and we have Sister Nivedita, such a beloved disciple, who then takes up the whole baton, if you like, of Swami Vivekananda's race and continues in very difficult circumstances with the same kind of courage, with the same strength, even with the same attitudes in the way she is speaking and writing, with such great determination, with such dedication, being the dedicated one, Nivedita. She goes ahead and fulfills what her master did not accomplish. And so we have to realize that it's not just giving up and ending it. There's something we have to do, even just as homage to the beloved. And now the discerning Tara, she gets somewhat composed by these words, and the due funeral obsequies of her husband are then performed with all the due traditional rites necessary. And we do these rites for two reasons. We do it to wish a soul Godspeed, if you will. It's not that the person has left, it's only that the outer coat has been taken off. And secondly, we do it in order to stabilize the grieving mind for ourselves and others. And so Rama suggests that he should crown Sugriva, or it was suggested that he should crown Sugriva as the king of Kishkinda, making it formal. Now across our pond we have, on the 6th of May, the same kind of thing, a coronation with pomp and ceremony that has been there in continuation for maybe over 1,000 years. And people wonder, what is it all about? But the formal crowning is a necessary thing, because it endorses and consolidates everybody's understanding. This person is a ruler now. And there's a mutual loyalty, fealty that is necessary between the monarch and the people and the monarch. And so it requires some vows, it requires some expressions of commitment, It is a sacred coronation that is taking place. And according to his vow of exile, Rama really refuses to enter any city. He cannot go into Kishkinda. He can't go into any town or village because his vow is to remain as an ascetic outside these urban areas. It would be breaking his commitment. Anyway, permitted and directed by him, the coronation of Sugriva and Ruma as his queen, they take place with all pomp at Kishkinda. And Angada is also installed at that moment as the crown prince. So at that point, the rainy season is coming. You know, in India, there are not just 4 seasons, 5 seasons, and the monsoon is one of them, otherwise known as the rainy season. And it was just beginning. That's a bit of a complication, logistic complication. And Rama and Lakshmana have to wait for something like 4 months, and they can't go into the city or the town or the village, so they wait in a cave. And then the new king Sugriva's regime celebrate so much. They were jubilant inside the fort, if you like, or city of Kishkinda. And after the inclement weather was over, then parties of monkeys or tribal people, whatever it is, were to be dispatched in all directions to search for Sita. That was the plan. And with this understanding, they dispersed. So that is that section of the story, which we will probably leave ourselves on for the time being, and see whether, in fact, things get advanced or whether there's extra delay. And we all wonder what effect this delay has on Sita, who's sitting there in Sri Lanka. So there's another aspect to this story which we probably should mention. Because you see, one king is gone, there's an unsettlement, the other king has not yet been crowned. And during that period of time, we see that there could have been panic in Kishkinda itself. Because when the news came that Vali had been slain by an archer, the townspeople wouldn't know anything else. Then the Vanaras, the tribal people, the inhabitants of Kishkinda, they started running here and there, and they were completely confused. Their hierarchy has been disrupted. And Tara, in fact, seeing this, she lays aside her own grief. And like a queen, she puts courage in her husband's subjects and says, well, till this day you walked before the king to battle. So why then do you run about and run away in fear? There's no danger for you. You see, wherever there is some disruption in civil society, there will be confusion. We see today that the world of military coups is not over. We see battles throughout the world. In Sudan, for example, we know there's huge conflict, but unfortunately it affects all the citizens in this day and age. And of course, any uncertainty about leadership will have this effect. So it is Tara that is the stabilizing element in Kishkinda. And she points out that their lives are in no danger. They'll have a different ruler, Sugriva, no doubt. And this is the former ruler's wife talking like this. You see the element of Kishkinda. If we were to ask what was the theme of today's story, it would be the theme of reconciliation and forgiveness, opening the heart over and above the grudges. The humility of forgiving And so when Tara tries to go to the spot where her husband lies dead, then the Vanaras stop her. We shall crown Angada king. We shall make safe the fortress. We shall defend the town. And we'll do it against Sugriva and his allies. That's the first reaction. They don't accept Sugriva. But she says, and these are the very people who appoint Sugriva in the first place. Well, her attitude is, this is Tara's, now my noble lord is dead, so really nothing matters. And boldly, she goes straight to where Rama and Lakshmana are standing. And when she sees her husband lying wounded to death, this is when her sorrow breaks out. Now, you see, Vali is gone. A new part of the story begins. And so next week, as I mentioned, we will see the outcome then of the new adventure and how Rama, using local resources, manages to overcome his obstacles and difficulties. We have to point out that in our own lives, there will be many obstacles. And how to get around the obstacles is the art, really, of living, or the art of spiritual growth and progress. It's part of the game of life. The obstacles are not there as malicious things against you. They're there, and so every problem has inherent in it a solution. And with this confidence, we can go forward with our own lives and learn all these lessons from this beautiful story of Rama. Thank you.
Thank you, Swamiji.
Thank you, Swamiji.
Beautiful storytelling.
Thank you, Swamiji. Have a
Thank you,
lovely
Swamiji.
day.
Thank you, Swami.
Thank you, Swamiji.